Hey, how's it going? It's me, and guess what I'm here to review? I'm here to review not one movie, but two. I'm reviewing the Spongebob SquarePants movies. Now I know, this is a very big deviation from what I did before. I don't care, I'm still doing it. Okay, so, there are two Spongebob movies, in case you didn't know. Now, just to say this really quickly, I'm a big fan of the TV show. The first couple seasons are incredible. They are the way that TV shows should be for adults and kids. They're perfect for both, and I just love them. The rest of the seasons I can still watch, but there's nothing really great about them. They're just some other show on TV, and that is kind of disappointing in a way. The movies, however, show the greatness of them, and so I'm going to talk about the movies, not the TV show. Okay? So, here we go. First movie, the SpongeBob SquarePants movie, released in 2004, like 5, maybe 6 years after the TV show was released. Wow, that's a really long time ago. Anyway, so, yeah, this movie, it's good, I have to say, it's pretty good. Now, I think I'll go positives and negatives on this movie. But rather than just saying the positives first and the negatives after, like most people do, or oppositely, I'm just going to say certain things that most movies should have, and say whether this movie does it well or not. Okay, first of all, plot. This movie's plot is actually pretty good. I mean, it's very interesting, the way it goes, the script and all, it's very well done, and I really like the plot of this movie. Next, characterization. I really like the characterization of this movie. Now, there's not a lot of development in the movie, but that's alright because you have to kind of know the TV show to watch this. If you don't know the TV show, you might not like it quite as much, but if you are a fan of the TV show, you're gonna love it. And so, basically, in this movie, these two guys, SpongeBob and Patrick, my two favorite characters in the TV show, they have to go to get this crown for King Neptune because his crown was stolen by none other than Plankton, and so they have to go to Shell City to find it, and it's like really tough for them. Nobody thinks they're gonna make it, and so they have like 6 days to do it before Neptune kills Mr. Krabs. I think that's enough of the plot right there. Maybe a few more will come in after. But anyway, other things about this movie. The animation, there's not really that much special about the animation. I mean, it's not quite as good as the TV show, but that's alright. I mean, the animation is still passable. I can still watch it and enjoy the animation. There's nothing really special about the animation. It's just kind of by the numbers, but it's still pretty good there. And a lot of movies are animated these days. At least this one is, that sort of stuff and all. Not CGI, but just like traditional and stuff. So yeah, the animation isn't as good as the TV show. It's still alright. Next, in terms of pacing, this movie is pretty well paced. It does go in good directions. I do like it. Sometimes it does kind of get confusing with the use of songs in the movie because the way they go into the plot is kind of strange. I mean, you'd expect that from a SpongeBob SquarePants movie, but still, it can be a bit strange at times. And the way it cuts back to different places, like first it's SpongeBob's journey, then it's like the town of Bikini Bottom, that is kind of confusing, and I would have liked it if they just stayed for most of the time on SpongeBob's journey, which they do, but it's just that when they're in Bikini Bottom, it's not quite as interesting. Okay, the villain, well, the villain's Plankton, and of course, he's really good in this movie, like he is in the TV show. Really liked him, really good character. Also, SpongeBob and Patrick have some really great chemistry in this movie, because in the TV show, they're really just, like, often considered as best friends, and you never really got to see them show that they have a chemistry or anything like that. You just know that they're really good friends. Here, that's really shown here, because you get really great chemistry from the two. It's great humor between the two, some great jokes in there, so that's good. So yeah, that sort of stuff's really good. Also, yeah, there are a lot of jokes in this movie that are really funny. I really laughed throughout this movie. It's really enjoyable. If you're an adult, you can watch this movie and you'll enjoy it. If you're a kid, you'll probably watch this movie and love it. If you're a teenager, you'll probably love it because it does have that sort of thing for teenagers as well in there. And last thing about the movie, it has a really good message. The message in this movie is like really good. The message is basically like being a kid is good, which is basically what the TV show's about, and I really like that. I mean, I really like being a kid, so yeah, this is a really good movie in my opinion. So I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. You should really watch. You should definitely watch this movie, no matter who you are. You're probably gonna really like this movie. Okay, next, SpongeBob SquarePants 2, Sponge Out of Water. Now, when I look through the internet, a lot of people actually say that this is not as good as the first one. I actually disagree with that because, again, this movie does have a few problems in it, and I'll get to that after, but first let me get on the positives. Okay, so if you haven't seen this movie and you've just seen the trailers, I'm here to tell you that this movie only goes on to land at like the ending, sort of like the first one did, and it's really just the last act in the above water stuff. Like there was a few scenes above water without the gang and all, but they only come on for the last act. In the first two, they're actually underwater, and the first thing, the animation in this movie I thought was a lot better than it was in the first movie. Like, the CGI in the movie, because, you know, when they go on land and stuff, that's alright. I mean, I can enjoy it. So, kind of like the first movie with the CGI animation compared to the traditional. But the traditional animation in this movie is a lot better than the first one. I mean, you get a lot more of those great shots using the animation. The style of it's great. So yeah, the animation in this movie is definitely better than the animation in the first one. Uh, Next, the characters are still really good. You do kind of get a bit more development on them this time, especially with Plankton, because Plankton was a little underdeveloped in the first movie because you kind of had to know him from the TV show. But here, you get to know a bit more about his character if you haven't seen the TV show, and I really like that. Next, other characters. I really like the characterization of Sandy because in the first movie she didn't really do that much to the plot, so that was kind of disappointing. Here she does a lot more, so that's great. Uh, that Patrick. Now, Patrick I didn't really like here as much as I liked in the first movie, because he had a better personality in the first one, and here it's not quite as good. SpongeBob is always great, except for the later seasons of the TV show, but in his movies he's always great, and so I really loved him in this one. It's kind of harder to see him as the main character here, though, because in the first one he was a lot more of the main character, and here he's just like he's the main character in like maybe 70% of this movie, he's the main character, but for a few other scenes, it just feels like they're focusing more on the other characters rather than SpongeBob. So that's one thing I didn't really like too much. Also, the plot for this movie. Now, the plot for this movie is probably the biggest problem with this movie, because the first movie's plot I really liked, the way they used it and all, but here it's just kind of jumbled together, and it's kind of harder to follow. Like, I like all the elements that are in the plot, but the way they just mash together doesn't really work too well. So I didn't really like that. Other than that, the first movie I had a bit of trouble with the music in it, like, you know, the singing and all, because some of the songs were good, it's just that they didn't really help with the plot of the movie, because the way it was working. But since the plot here is very different, the songs work for the movie a lot better, and I really like to see that. Also, Antonio Banderas is in this movie as a pirate. I really liked him in this movie. Not a lot of people talk about him, but I thought he was genuinely good in this movie. You can tell he's having a lot of fun in the role, and he's really enjoyable with the big beard and all on. It's kind of funny to see him in the beard after seeing his other movies, so that was good. Other than that, well, you can say that this movie isn't very memorable, because not too much happens in this movie. Like, it's pretty short, and you can tell where the acts are, separated. It's just that, it's kind of hard to remember this in like 10 years or whatever, unless you're a SpongeBob fan, of course. Anyway, other than that, I'd have to say that this movie, well, like I said, the final act deals with all of the live action, and I did like the live action stuff. It was very enjoyable, very funny, but it wasn't as good as the traditional animation, which I liked a lot more. So I just think that it's a lot better with the traditional animation rather than the CGI. It's still good, the CGI. I have a lot of fun with it, but I'm just saying that the first two acts with the traditional animation is a lot better, and if you're just going to watch this movie for those two, that is totally worth it. Just watch it for those two. If you do want to see the third act, that's fine. It's still a very good act, but if you just want to see the first two, just watch the first two. Okay, so what am I going to give this movie? I'm going to give it, I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10, because while I did say a few negative things about this movie, I do think it's an improvement over the first one. So that's my first half of a star review. 8.5. It's pretty new, huh? Well, you better expect that now from my channel. So yeah, I really like these two movies. They're a lot of fun. Not incredibly memorable, but you're really gonna like them for the time. Unless you hate SpongeBob, in which case you're gonna hate these movies. It's SpongeBob fans first and foremost. If you're just a normal person, you might still enjoy it, but it's SpongeBob fans first and foremost. So if you like this video, or just one of the reviews, or two, then please subscribe to my channel. I will have more out soon. And, as always, you don't have to go while you got Timo.